Now, the first game on this list of family board games that you might want to avoid is a very recent release. It only came out at the very end of 2021, and I was so excited about it, I nearly bought it immediately. I'm very happy that I didn't, though, because later on, Board Game Arena released a digital version of the game. I was able to play it and found out that it's pretty terrible. That game, along with two others that might not be worth buying, at least if your tastes are anything like mine, and three others that I think are better alternatives, is the topic of this video. Hello, my name is Ben, the Board Game Dad, and on this channel I talk about all kinds of board games with a specialty on family board games, because this year I'm working on compiling my favorite board games of 2022. Now, if you're interested in board games of this category, or any games really, I also have a web app called theperfectboardgame.com where I've made a recent update making it easier for you to find board game deals for family board games, or you can even sign up for regular notifications whenever board games of your preferred category drop in price. You can check it out at theperfectboardgame.com. Now let's talk about that game that I mentioned in the introduction. The game is Seven Wonders Architects. Now, the reason I was so excited about this game is because I have already played the original Seven Wonders game, and Seven Wonders Duel I think is an excellent game, but I really want to talk about how this one really disappointed my expectations. So normally when I talk about games, I rate it on 5 categories: theme, mechanics, luck, strategy, and complexity. Now, when I heard about Seven Wonders Architects, the thing that really compelled me was basically what they wanted to do was make Seven Wonders more approachable so that families and kids of all ages could play this game. And so really they reduced the complexity of the game. But in so doing, they took away a lot of the flavor of what I know to be Seven Wonders. If this had been another game, I probably would be more lenient about my assessment of it, but the problem is when I'm playing a Seven Wonders game, I go into it with a certain expectation. When I play a Seven Wonders game, the thing that I really like about it is the complexity of the drafting mechanism. What Seven Wonders Architects has done is eliminate that decision making. It feels very much like every card is equally valuable, but even worse, they've removed the drafting mechanism. So instead of taking a hand of cards, picking one and passing it to your neighbor, you're now taking the top card on a face-up deck. And the question you've really got to ask yourself is, do I want to take the top card on the deck on my right and deprive my right neighbor of having access to that card? Or do I want to take the card on my left and deprive my left neighbor of having access to that card? But the thing is, after that card is taken, you have no idea what's going to be underneath it anyway. You're not aware of what the entire deck looks like. And even worse, they've added a totally blind card. If you don't like either of those, you can just take one blindly and see what happens. But it really strips the game of all of the drafting mechanism that made Seven Wonders what it is. So how would I score this game? Well, if I superimposed my ratings for this game on top of the original Seven Wonders, I would say that thematically it's about the same. They've reduced the complexity. They've probably to like a 2. They've reduced the strategy to like a 3. And then they've increased the luck to like maybe a 7 or something. But mechanics, that's where I think the game is really lacking. I used to find the drafting mechanism of Seven Wonders very compelling. Now it's really boring, and it kind of feels like every card is just as valuable as any other card. So for mechanics, I would give it like a 3. So what game should you play instead? Well, the way I see it, if you want to make a game that's complex, more accessible for younger audiences, what you need to do is really strip out everything that's unnecessary, but keep the exciting element of the original game. Now, if the exciting element of the original game is the drafting mechanism, don't eliminate that. Don't replace it with decks. Keep the drafting mechanism, but get rid of the unnecessary stuff. Like maybe the military stuff is pretty complex, and then the science scoring in the original game, they've basically eliminated the science scoring in Architects, but get rid of that too. I agree that the science mechanism is too difficult for young players. a game that really embodies a streamlined version of that drafting mechanism. And in fact, a game that's even more interesting to me than Sushi Go, which is a game I mentioned in my previous video on top 10 family games, is Draftosaurus. Draftosaurus is also a relatively new game, and in Draftosaurus, you're drafting, as the name implies, but instead of drafting cards, you're drafting little dinosaur wooden pieces. And so you have a little handful of dinosaurs. You're putting one dinosaur in your dino park, and then you're passing it to another player. When you play that dinosaur, you can get scored based on different criteria. So one dinosaur pen is scored based on how many dinosaurs of the same type are in the pen. And another pen is all dinosaurs that are different. And then there's another one where you want to put dinosaurs in pairs, or another scoring area where you get points as long as the dinosaur of that type is the only dinosaur in the entire park that is of that type. It's the unique dinosaur. So you've had some really easy to understand scoring mechanisms. I think that's key, but it retains the drafting mechanic that is so attractive in like the original Seven Wonders or many other drafting games. Also, drafting little dinosaur figures is much more interesting than drafting cards, and I really like that a lot. The game is not very expensive, and I had a lot of fun with it. So, I would say steer clear of Seven Wonders Architects. If you want a drafting game that is simplified, play Draftosaurus instead. For ratings, the theme is barely there, maybe like a 1, okay? But the drafting mechanism is so pure in this game, and it really comes through. So for mechanics, maybe a 6 or a 7. Luck is much more reduced because you don't have like random cards that you're flipping off of a deck. Luck is probably a 4. Strategy and complexity, though, they remain low, like less than 5. Maybe 4 for strategy and 2 for complexity. Maybe 3 for complexity. Now, the next game is a game that I've recommended before, but I recommended the family version, and I still like the family version. The problem with the game, though, is I recently discovered some issues with it when I played the full version. What I'm talking about is Isle of Cats. Now, to jog your memory, if you watched my top 10 video, I gave Isle of Cats an honorable mention because I bought the game because my daughter likes cats and I like the tile placing mechanic. The family version of the game is just that. You're placing cats on a boat. And I still enjoy that, okay? The problem is that's not the way the game was designed. It was designed to be played with the full version of the game. My issue is when I play that game, the most interesting thing about the game is getting cats and putting them on a boat. I like that. I still do. But in order to make the game more complex and more interesting for adults, they added a card drafting mechanism. So the beginning of the round, the first thing you do is you draft cards and you pass them around. After everyone's drafted their cards, you then have to decide which cards you want to buy. That's a lot like Terraforming Mars, if you're familiar with that game. So you have to buy them, and then the cards you don't want to buy or you can't afford, they just get discarded. And then after you've bought cards, you have to play cards in order to take a cat. And then only then do you do what I think the game is really about and take cats and put them in your boat. The problem with the game is it's added so much stuff that doesn't make the game more fun. Now, that's not a problem. I mean, I can still play the family game, but then why am I buying a huge box that has all of these extra things in it, all these extra cards, if all that extra stuff doesn't make the game more interesting? I would rather play a game that just captures the joy of saving cats. All right. So, what are my recommendations? Well, I've recommended Calico in the past, and I think it's a great game. I'm not going to go into it, though, because I've talked about it before. I want to talk about a new game that really captures the tile placing mechanic. Although it's a little bit drier and it doesn't involve any cats, unfortunately. The game is My City. Now, if you look at My City, immediately you'll notice that it looks really dry. The artwork in this game is not nearly as exciting as Isle of Cats, but the gameplay is the best part of Isle of Cats. Now, this is a legacy game, and every player gets their own board, and you play the game in episodes. Every episode, you open an envelope, and you expose some stickers, which you can put on your boards, making every board unique. That's the legacy aspect of the game. And then you also expose some rules and some objectives. And so the game is getting a little bit more rich as you play through it. But what I like is it's the same idea. You're trying to cover some things up in order to prevent yourself from losing points, like the rats in Calico. So you're trying to cover stones, and you're trying to leave trees exposed. Trees will give you points. And then you also get points by putting buildings of the same color next to each other. The nice thing is, though, the way that the gameplay goes is one player flips over a card, and every player simultaneously gets to place the building matching the card onto their own map. And once everybody's made that decision, another player flips over a card and everybody does it again. This is simultaneous gameplay, and I love that when I'm playing with my kids. It keeps the gameplay moving. You're not having to wait for people to take their turns. Oftentimes my kids, one of the biggest problems they have with games is they don't pay attention to when their turn starts, and it really slows things down. I have to remind them, it's your turn, it's your turn. With my city, that's really resolved, you know. Okay, everybody, we're flipping over the next card. Here it is. Oh, get that building. Okay, everybody place it. All right, we're flipping over the next card. It really keeps it moving. I will say I have not played every level or every episode yet, so I'm not sure if it's going to eventually get like so complex my kids can't handle it anymore. But I don't really think so, because I know how the there is a non-legacy version of the game, and you flip your boards over. So it comes with two versions: one that you can play and put stickers on the board and make it different every time, or you can just do the plain version, which has the base rules and is a map that never changes. Comparing the two, I would say that neither one of them has a very excellent theme, but mechanically, my city is a lot purer with a high mechanics score of like 7. The problem with Isle of Cats is the mechanics, the drafting, the buying, all that extra stuff. It drags on the game. You don't play this game and think, oh, it's so brilliant how everything works together. You play this, for me, I play the game and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we have to do the drafting again. Very low mechanics score for that game. You look at luck, very little luck involved in my city because every player is getting the same thing. You look at Isle of Cats and you have like, you don't know what the cards are going to be. You have to draft them. You know, like it's going to be, everybody's going to have different cards every time. The drafting mechanism is a great way to mitigate the luck, but it seems really frustrating because you also have the luck of what cats come out and then the order. It's too tedious. Which, I mean, I guess I could get to complexity last, but strategy wise, because of the drafting, I don't know. They're about middle, I guess, for both games. And then for complexity, comparing the family game to My City, I would say it's the same, but My City has the element of adding more envelopes, so it can get more complex as you play through. But I think My City is just simpler all around, and most importantly, you're not buying extra pieces that you're not even going to enjoy playing with, like the cards in Isle of Cats. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about a game that has become immensely popular and that I think is very overrated. Now, this is a popular game. A lot of people love it. You know, take my opinion with a grain of salt. But here, look. I don't like Wingspan, okay? Or maybe I should say there are many games that I would rather play than Wingspan. I was very excited about Wingspan when I first played it, and it just gets old the more I play it. So, if you're not familiar with the game, this is an engine building game where you are collecting birds, and the birds go into an area on your own player board, and each area on your player board is associated with the action. So every time you take the action, it allows you to get extra bonuses, the ones that are associated with the birds in that area. And so actions become more and more powerful as you add more birds to them. But one of the issues that I've always had is that nothing about it really feels like a bird game. It feels like the theme is just a dressing on top of the game. And I guess I kind of tire of kind of the extra pieces that it adds. I just want to get to the heart of that game as well. Much like what I was saying about Seven Wonders. It's all about finding the best aspect of that game and really streamlining it so that the game is all about just the best and lose everything else that's an accessory. So for theme, it has a 2, mechanics a 6, luck a 7, strategy a 5, and complexity a 5. So what's the alternative to Wingspan? The game that I think does what Wingspan is trying to do, only a lot better, is Gizmos. Now, Gizmos is about building a contraption, and whereas Wingspan, you're collecting birds, in Gizmos, you're building little gizmos to help make your contraption or your machine work more efficiently. Get it? It's an engine builder. You want the invention to become stronger and more powerful. Like Wingspan, on your turn, you can choose from any of a number of actions, but as you play the game, every action gets cards added to it that make the action more powerful. And then something that Gizmos does that Wingspan doesn't do nearly as well is it allows you to have chain reactions where one action can trigger another action, and you get a much stronger sense that you're gaining more and more powerful turns, and that really accelerates the game as you play. So Gizmos uses the dice tower again, but instead of dice, it's marbles. And I think that is actually really fun. It's a very tactile resource, but it eliminates this egg thing, which doesn't really add to Wingspan in any way. Another thing that Gizmos has that Wingspan doesn't have is you have tiers of cards. So level 1, level 2, and level 3, which means that the cards are more sorted. And you have, you know that level 3 cards are always going to be more expensive than level 1 cards, and you have something available in every tier. That's not the case in Wingspan. So that reduces the luck factor. The theme is not very impressive. I mean, it's there. I like that it's about machines and you're building a machine. That's consistent, but it's very ordinary. It's not a very exciting theme. I'd probably say the theme is like a 3. The mechanics are just a lot better. Mechanics is like an 8 or a 9. Luck is less, not a whole lot less, probably like a 5. And also strategy is a 5, but complexity is less. There's probably complexity of like 3, which I think makes the game easier to explain and especially more accessible for younger audiences. So, in summary, Seven Wonders Architects, Isle of Cats, Wingspan, games I'm not very excited about. Much more streamlined games, more accessible for the entire family. Draftosaurus, much simpler by the way, but just very streamlined gameplay, quicker gameplay. My City, faster gameplay, everyone taking turns at the same time, keeping the action moving. And then Gizmos, just more fun, less extra stuff, and a more entertaining engine to build, the more exciting things that you can do on your turn, especially with the chain reactions. Those are my recommendations. Hey, look, the other 3 games, well, I'd like to know what you think. I'd like to know, especially, are there any games that you can think of that are overrated? What about some underrated games? What about games that don't get as much attention? I really feel like each of the 3 games that I've named doesn't have the attention it deserves, but I'd like to know what you think as well. Thank you for watching this video, and hey, if you liked the shirt, by the way, you can also find these on theperfectboardgame.com. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.